Hi, Gemini. This is Tisch Aitken, and this is your forecast for the month of July. There are a lot of things at play at once, and we're still in the middle of eclipse season, and the nodes of fate are actually now in your sign axis. So the eclipses are entering the Gemini Sagittarius axis, and you're going to be experiencing a lot more change and transition. And I know a lot of Sagittarians and Geminis because you already had Saturn transiting in the opposite sign of Sagittarius from on and off from the end of 2014 until the fall of 2000, until December of 2017. So you had that aspect, but now the nodes of fate are transiting in your sign axis. And the North Node deals with what you're going towards. And in Gemini, it's about local community, it's about learning, it's about gathering and dispersing information, it's about marketing and sales and learning a lot more about facilitating your own business in terms of if you have your own business or a side business, you want to learn more about social media, whether or not, however you feel on a personal perspective of it, you really, this is a time because Gemini does rule communication in all forms, and it rules uh, information and communication. And that medium now is through social media. And this is an opportunity for you to really learn to market yourself more, and definitely around taking classes and learning and teaching information. I would say it's an excellent time to get involved in local neighborhood activities and help to get involved in community events, because we're getting a brief glimpse, or we have gotten an opportunity at least to see a preview of Saturn in Aquarius. And that's really around the time the whole social distancing was implemented, which was around the middle of March. I mean, in my area, it was right around St. Patrick's Day. I know people were really talking then about, social distancing and staying in place and all of that. But really, at that time, we had the equinox occur on March 19th, so early, kind of an early day to have it. Generally, it's more in the like the 21st or 22nd, and then on the 23rd of March, we had Saturn enter Aquarius briefly, and it will re-enter the sign of Capricorn on July 2nd. And for you, Saturn in Aquarius is, it's a trine, it makes a trine to your sun sign. It's a fellow air sign. So again, it's a lot around communication and learning and enlightenment, and Aquarius rules community on a very broad level. It deals with networking, and it deals with all forms of organizations, and it's about humanitarianism and about thinking on the collective scale. And Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius, which is the higher octave of Mercury. So it's really about brilliance, chaos, and innovation. But it's really, I think we're really going and gearing more towards the age of Aquarius more than ever, because at the end of the year, we're going to have what's known as a great cycle, when Saturn and Jupiter meet up every 20 years. And this time they're going to form a conjunction at 0 degrees of Aquarius on the winter solstice on December 21st. And that is at 0 degrees, a degree of new beginnings, and really going again more towards communication and connection. And although we have been having to physically limit ourselves and social distance, and we're in a time of permanent change with all this Capricorn that took place in the sky when Saturn, which is the ruler of Capricorn, met up with Pluto, the planet of death and rebirth, at the world axis, which is when there's certain degrees that correlate with the world axis, which means that everybody gets impacted in some level, and also that people on the world stage and big events occur during that time. And so 22 degrees of a cardinal sign is at the world axis, and that's Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. So when they met up, and they meet up approximately every 34 to 36 years, so that doesn't happen very frequently. And that is, again, a mass metamorphosis, especially in Capricorn, which is about mass karma and collapsing of old structures in many different ways in many areas of our lives and in the world. But with this brief preview of Saturn and Aquarius, which is so visionary and futuristic and will enable all of us to morph in this new world in terms of reinventing ourselves, in terms of, as a friend of mine said, which I was 93 years old, and I agree with him. He said there will be some that don't have the chance or the choice. So helping people that don't have that opportunity, whether it's through financial or health restrictions, and working more from that vantage of how you can be a form of community in the Gemini sense, which is in a very local perspective, but also in the Aquarian sense, which is much more even in the universal way, but really on the collective and through communication and connection and enlightenment. And so I think, I think that Gemini will resonate very well with that. And the other thing too, we have a lot of, so last month we had 2 eclipses in June. We had a lunar eclipse, a partial lunar eclipse occur in your house of partnerships and relationships. And the nodes of fate, which are involved with eclipses, wherever the nodes of fate are transiting is where the eclipse axis is. So they change from Capricorn, Cancer to Sagittarius, Gemini. So the North Node of Destiny is transiting your sign, and that began on May 5th of 2020 and will be until January of 2022. And that is where everybody is growing in some level, again, about getting involved locally with community and through education and learning and perhaps local, more short distance travel. I think that unfortunately the travel industry is definitely going to get hit with the nodes of fate. The South Node in Sagittarius is more about long distance travel, and that will be impeded by this because the South Node is going to have more challenge because that's more of a release, and the North Node is being more supported by the universe or the zodiac right now. But that said, we are meant to be going towards teaching and learning and writing, and both signs embody that in different ways. So Venus has been retrograde in your sign. That's another big deal. And Venus retrogrades once every year and a half. Year and a half. And it retrogrades in 5 signs in our lifetime. In some cases, it retrogrades in one sign and then goes to the late degrees of the sign prior to that sign. But every 8 years, it retrogrades in your sign and stays in Gemini. So it retrograded on May 13th at 21 degrees of Gemini in your first house of self and new beginnings, and it will station direct, or did station direct, on June 25th. And this again is a chance for you to really figure out, because Venus will be retrograding in your first house for a while now, until August 8th of this year. And so it gives you an opportunity to figure out what you really value, how you can be much more creative in your life, because it's been out of bounds, which means it exceeds the sun's outer limit by declination. And that began on April 2nd of this year, and it continues well through July 1st. So through the beginning of this month, I'm doing this a little bit before, and so with many planets retrograde, but I'm still getting to it. But that's also something that really emphasizes the energy of Venus, and it's going to be in Gemini a while longer, which is again about really connecting with different people, really figuring out what's creative to you, focusing more on writing and communication and what you love. And I think that, again, the last time it happened was in 2012. It'll happen again in 2028, but that is a significant time for you. And we also have the North Node of Destiny in your sign until January of 2022. So it's a lot of personal growth being emphasized. And Saturn, all of the lineup really of the Capricorn story, which again, we will never see this much Capricorn in the sky again in our lifetime, and that is mass karma, death and rebirth, and collapsing of old structures. And that began, in the beginning of the year when we had the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, and they have not met up in the sign of Capricorn with the south node of fate and Jupiter also as well since, over 500 years ago. So with that said, there's a big, renovation going on, reconstruction, restructuring in our lives, and metamorphosis. And it's like the world is going through a mass Saturn transit and a mass Pluto transit. And for you, it's in your house of joint resources and finances, and it's in the house of uh, dealing with investments. And so I think that that's something where you also want to reevaluate how you can, let's see here, how you can maybe take care of some debt, or maybe you're dealing, it's a house of intimacy and emotional blocks, how you can deal with blocked wounds, or maybe some old painful memories surface that you really haven't dealt with. And with all of this retrograde energy, the only planets that are not currently retrograde are Mars and Uranus. And that's another zinger in the whole thing, is that Mars is going to be transiting in Aries for the remainder of the year. It entered the cardinal fire sign of Aries on June 27th, and it will be in Aries until January 3rd of 2021. And so that is, it's very good for getting things accomplished. And for you, it represents the house of friends and groups. And, that's an area where you're going to be dealing with a lot of, again, networking and probably promoting yourself in some way. And again, learning and such. But I think that that in this way too, there might be a review period also, that, with friends or connections, or maybe, there's something that people from the past resurface that are already with Venus retrograde in your sign. I'm sure has happened in different ways, whether it's through memories or people literally that you have reconnected with. But I think that that's a big deal. And Mars in Aries is going to be a big deal in the collective, because it's going to set off that Saturn-Pluto conjunction 3 times. So Mars is going to be in Aries, where it's definitely all about getting things done and catalyzing change and moving ahead. But it's in a fire sign that doesn't like to be impeded or blocked in any way. And it's going to clash with Capricorn 3 times. So it's going to square Capricorn on August 11th, and so right around leading up to that point, it's setting off that Saturn-Pluto conjunction. It does again so on October 7th, when it is retrograde, and that will even be more challenging, because Mars does not like being held back, because it's really how we move ahead and how we take action and how we get work done. And it squares and sets off Capricorn in that conjunction again on the world axis. So I would say big things happening around these time frames, and that's on December 19th, right before, well, Saturn at that time will have just exited the sign of Capricorn and entered Aquarius, which it does on December 17th. But that square hits, that Mars hits that conjunction one final time on December 19th, so right around the winter solstice. So that's a big deal too, and we're working with seeing what that brings from this whole year of renovation and reconstruction on a mass level, and really figuring this summer, this small window of July and August, of working with Mars and Aries, which is really good at getting things accomplished, and in the house of wishes, really, and through networking, and if they're, whether or not you're in a job where something might be tenuous, or you're just learning new skills, because it's the house of innovation and ingenuity, and also just reconnecting with people perhaps that maybe you've worked with in the past for forming new connections. I would suggest a lot of focus on that, and reassessment on how you can move ahead in the best way, because really in the beginning of the year is after Mars goes direct, because it stations direct on November 13th, but it doesn't exit Aries until January 3rd. Then I think it's really when you get the whole green light to move ahead in a way. I'm not saying, obviously, we're not to get things done, but there will be a lot of delays. And the fact it's setting off that conjunction, realistically, it's going to be challenging when it does happen. There's a few times, and even when Pluto stations direct on October 4th, it's going to be at 22 cardinal, again, triggering that world access. And so that's also a big deal. And we had the total solar eclipse happen on the solstice weekend, and that for you fell in your second house of income and what's of value and how you earn money. So that's bringing in new beginnings and how you make money. That was a total solar eclipse that happened less than 8 hours after the solstice occurred. So that hit the whole world, and that is a big deal. We're still getting stories from how that's bringing in a lot of change, and for some people it can bring in great new opportunities, and for you falling in the house of income and money and what's of value. But Mercury, which rules your chart and rules your sign, is retrograde until July 12th in the sign of Cancer, in the cardinal water sign, which is gonna is transiting in your house of income and how you earn money, and it's going to be there for a while. So that's also assessing uh, more ways that you can improve, how you do business, and also, again, reassessing what's of value to you, and that's important, obviously. So I think that then we have another new moon. Actually, there's a second new moon in Cancer, because we had one at the very first degree, and we have a second new moon in Cancer that takes place on, let's see, on July 20th, and that occurs at 28 degrees of Cancer, and that's falling in your house of income and how you earn money. So you get two new moons. One was a total solar eclipse that can last for a few months, the effect, especially if you have anything close to 0 degrees cardinal, and the cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. If you have planets or angles that are close to that point, you will get a lot of impact from that. And eclipses are like wild cards. They're very unpredictable, but they're going to usher in a lot of change, a lot of frenzied activity, but they can bring they can bring crisis, but they can also bring turning points, and they can bring major new beginnings. And so it's, not something that's ominous per se. They're very powerful, and this is a very challenging time for all of us realistically, but it's going to be hopefully also a shift of consciousness, and with even that preview of Saturn and Aquarius, and with Jupiter meeting up, that's more like the real age of Aquarius, where I think we are striving for much more enlightenment and something to aspire for, that occurs at the very end of the year, winter solstice. So we've got that at play. We've got the third and final eclipse, because of course of the year like this, we have to have 6 eclipses as opposed to 4 eclipses, which generally happen in a year. And so the third and final eclipse occurs on July 5th, and that's the day after the 4th of July, obviously, and it falls in at, let's see, at 13 degrees of Capricorn. So again, that's in your house of joint resources and debt. So that, eclipses bring light to things, and make you see things in ways you've never seen them before, whether it's helping you to figure out if you are in some debt or financial issues you're trying to improve and reevaluate this year, but also it can bring in some money. Maybe that's a lump sum of money that comes to you, because that could be fruition and completion and release. And it's also good for doing transformative work and purging and letting go. But it's the house of death and rebirth, and it is will bring the ending of the eclipse. Well, not the eclipse season. We've got a few weeks after, but that's the third and final eclipse, and that's the last eclipse in Capricorn, and we just had the final eclipse in Cancer. So now the eclipses are going to be in the Gemini Sagittarius axis, in your sign axis, and you have the North Node there for a while, and Venus for a while as well. So I think it's a big time for all of us. We have a Jupiter Neptune sextile that occurs on July 27th, and that's with Jupiter transiting in the sign of Capricorn, forming a sextile to Neptune and Pisces, and that's an aspect of opportunity, and that can be a very manifesting energy. So making the most of that with Jupiter transiting in your, let's see, your eighth house of joint resources, and aspecting the 10th house. So I think that's helpful energy, and wish you a lot of luck, and thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.